Hello, my name is Omar, and for my video editing assignment I have chosen to do the life and works of Robert Frank. Robert Frank was a highly influential photographer and considered revolutionary for his ability to tell a story through a single static image. He was considered to have changed the way people thought of telling a story through photography and documentary style. Born November 9th in Zurich, Switzerland, and died September 9th, 2019, just last year at the age of 94. His father was a successful businessman and amateur photographer. His mother was a wealthy factory owner. This led him to the life of a photographer. Through contact with his father in 1941, he met Hermann Segesser, apprenticeship with him after high school. Segesser was a photographer and photo editor who lived close to the Frank. In 1942, he met Michael Wolgensinger, a influential magazine photographer with Swiss magazines. Under these apprenticeships, Frank made his first of 4 photo books called 40 Photos. This first one was published in 1946, and it was mostly of rural Swiss life. These were handmade books that Frank would stitch together and fill with his pictures. Frustrated with Swiss life and the magazine industry, he moved to the United States in 1947. There he met and worked for Alexei Brodovich, who was the editor of Harper's Bazaar magazine at the time, which was an influential magazine. He became frustrated and bored with the magazine industry in the US as well, and moved to Peru to photograph, in his own words, things that move. In between 1949 and 1953, he would, after coming back to New York, he would then move between New York and Europe. Through his photo books, he tried to place them in a sequenced order so that they would more clearly tell a story, and he hoped that this would attract his works to be more frequently published, as he was not. Sequencing his photos did not work out well, so he continued and made his second book in 1949, which was of pictures of his future wife that he titled Mary's Book. In 1952, he released Black and White Things, which was a collection of photos he had taken in Europe and New York. And this got him some significant attention. This quote describes what people thought of his work. "It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye." And this basically describes what people thought of Frank's ability to tell a story with a single image. That he could draw out these invisible stories that could not be seen through static imagery. In 1953, he returned to New York and was still disappointed about his lack of published work, so he applied for the John Simon Guggenheim Memorial Foundation Fellowship. His goal, in his own word, was to photograph freely throughout the United States. This would lead him to make his 4th and most infamous work, his final book, The Americans. This is an overview of his works, and I believe it clearly shows his shift in subject matter. At the top we have rural Swiss life, in the top left a band and some light bulbs, and immediately after that we have a fireworks display and rural street in Peru. In the top right, going in chronological order, we have some sort of procession down the street in France, and the bottom 2 are of a couple in New York in some bumper cars, and a man at some sort of music area, this Carl Fischer music building, and you can see the immediate shift after he left Switzerland, that he started taking photos of what he wanted to take photos of, which were people in all walks of life, and to try and tell their story through these single images or collections of them. The Americans was his most famous and controversial book. It got him called a joyless man who hates the country of adoption, and was generally considered anti-American by several magazines for its pictures. The process to make it was a 9-month trip in a used Ford that Frank bought with his entire family. It produced 767 rolls of film and had 83 pictures in total when it was released, first in France in 1958 and in the US a year later in 1959. Frank would try to make movies later in his life and would switch between that from the 50s until 2004. The Americans was called anti-American for images such as this. This image shows segregation, both literally, and it communicates it in a less literal sense. The African-American occupants of this car and the white occupants are segregated by these windows, and this was known to be how things worked at the time. So this was the sort of communication Frank was renowned for in his photos. This photo got Frank called anti-American because it displays a 4th of July celebration where the flag is torn and there's trash across the yard. This is not the America that Americans pictured, as that was where most of the criticism came from. They all imagined nice, neat suburban houses and living. Frank hated this style of conformity and believed that by capturing these places that were not shown to Americans and not considered, therefore, American, that he would find a true America, and that would be what was good about America. This is my critique. From the critical's perspective, I believe the use of lines to draw the viewer's eye, the use of light and depth of field are all very well done. Both images are from his 40 photos collection. They both feature roads that draw the viewer's eye from the foreground to the main subject matter of the images, as well as the light. You can see on the right image that there is a beam of light ending and illuminating the buildings in the background, streaming from over a mountain, and there is a similar effect if you look at the shadows on the left. You follow the road that the sled is on to the sled, and that there is also light casting shadows from the right onto the men on the sled. You can also see very clearly into the background for the most part, which illustrates a good depth of field. Historically, this 40 photos collection was being created during the Second World War, and Frank was growing up during this time, which leads me to the personal perspective, which I believe this might explain why Frank was frustrated and bored with rural Swiss life and why he felt it was stifling his work, given the devastation we know that was occurring all around Europe during this time due to the Second World War. This is my riff part of the assignment. On the left is a photo called View from a Hotel Window that Frank took of a rural community somewhere in America from a hotel window. You can't see a single person in the image, and the town looks slightly run down in some areas, but you can still see some industrial type buildings and columns of steam in the background. On the right, we have an image I took of an area near my hometown called Rice Village. It is a popular shopping and center for restaurants, but no longer due to the quarantine and impact of coronavirus. It is completely abandoned. The fact that I was able to stand in the street and take this picture is impressive in and of itself, because traffic on any given day ensures that were there not a quarantine, I would have been run over. The emptiness between my image and Frank's image I found eerily similar, and that is why I chose to compare these two, as they both show, obviously my area isn't as run down as the one Frank took an image of, but the emptiness is still concerningly similar. In summary, I believe Frank is a highly influential photographer whose work changed how we tell stories through photos, and his works will continue to be considered that way for a long time to come.